So for me, the janitoring means giving the context and making sure that the setting is right for success, be it right people in the right places or something else, appropriate processes, ways of working. It is a really massive cliche, but I try to help people finding answers to their own questions.
Hi, I am Sophie Vaux, and this is the Rise and Play podcast. In the show, I sit down with influential thought leaders of the gaming industry to deconstruct how they create the best team and company cultures in order to create the best games. Every episode brings actionable insight to improve your leadership, self-awareness, and emotional management skills. Because becoming a better leader starts with becoming a better human. So, are you ready to unlock your full potential in life and business? Let's begin. I'm very excited to tell you more about today's sponsor, Source10. I've been a big fan of Source and Mission since I met the founders in the early days. As a product manager, I believe in deeper player research at a human and psychological level, understanding the why of the players, instead of relying solely on behavioral data. The player intelligence products offer the insights you need to create novel experiences in your segment, whether you're developing a new title or improving a live experience for millions of players. Sourced and AI-driven psychological insights provide a depth of player understanding that is impossible to achieve with surface-level metrics. Create more accurate product assumptions, accelerate development cycles, and improve marketing performance when you understand your players at a fundamental human level. Visit go.sourcen.io/riseandplay, that's SOLSTEN, for a demo and receive 30% off your first Sourcen engagement crafted to your studio's needs. Learn why EA, Supercell, Wooga, and more use Sourcen to create the best human-centric gaming experiences possible. Hi everyone. So today I'm sitting with Saara Bergström. Saara has had a close to 15-year career in advertising, product marketing, and public relations. And she's at Next Games, where she has worked for close to 10 years and pivoted from CMO to COO last year and started a new journey officially in an operational role. She's built several result-oriented teams from the ground up, as well as multiple rounds of experience, all the way from very hands-on startup settings to being part of executing complex corporate projects, including being part of a core IPO team that was part of a journey of Next Game, and as well as operational restructuring in large and small scale. And for the context as well, last year, Next Games was also acquired by Netflix, which is also part of what makes the whole journey exciting with the role and evolving. But yeah, Saara, nice to have you here. How are you?
Lovely to be here. And thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm a big fan of the podcast and the community that you've built. So a pleasure for sure. Spring is coming to Helsinki slowly and surely. Weather is still cold, but getting there.
It's funny, today in Berlin it's snowing, so I feel really like in Finland, and we are already, early February, where I thought spring was coming, but for us in Berlin, spring is not coming yet.
Yeah, you get it a lot earlier than us. Lucky you.
So I like to kick off a conversation with what creates spark in our life and excitement. And so what do you feel excited about these days?
From a personal perspective, my very exciting project is our son, who's soon 3, and just like constantly being amazed every day on how fast he grows and how he learns, and just amazed of the creativity in a 3-year-old. I heard a saying that with kids, days are long and years are short, and I feel like it's very true. Time flies by when you look back the years, but sometimes 15 minutes feels like a lifetime when a temper tantrum hits you. And then from a professional perspective, of course, I have a newish role as the Chief Operating Officer of Next Games, or the company janitor, as I refer myself often. And it's really a professionally interesting journey and a place to be, joining a small startup all the way to being a part of an IPO, working in a publicly listed company, and then the transformation to a Netflix studio and how things change along the way. Really, I feel like we're on the brink of something new and exciting as a company. We're switching from free-to-play business into an internal Netflix studio, purely focused engagement. And so personally, it's a really exciting opportunity to experience, first of all, working with Netflix, but more importantly, being able to be a part of it and contribute to a shift in the industry at large even.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting ride, and you've been there like for a decade. And so you've seen like exactly up and downs, like from small to like larger organization to acquisition. So I would like to understand as well more your thinking. How do you perceive the role of COO, even when you change role? What is your perception of a role, and what is the change of focus from CMO to COO, and where to start even when you take the title of COO?
So I have for a long time referred to myself as being the janitor. I used to be the marketing janitor, and now I'm the company janitor. And really, this word has two meanings to me. I feel like as a COO or as a leader in general, like no matter what my focus is to make sure that the teams and now, of course, the whole organization has a clear runway and a path to execution. So for me, the janitoring means giving the context and making sure that the setting is right for success, be it right people in the right places or something else, appropriate processes, ways of working, rather than telling people what to do exactly. It is a really massive cliche, but I try to help people help finding answers to their own questions.
Yeah, I really like also the definition with the mental models, because sometimes this kind of role can be really overwhelming. Like I have to take care of everything, how the company runs, the ways of working, who we hire, and having the structure, which is also an answer by itself, how you think about things in a structured way. What is the outcome, right? Like removing blockers, making it smooth for people for where they need to go, but also like your own philosophy on how you approach things and creating a team. So what departments of a company do you feel are what a CEO should be looking at, right? So what are the departments that you're overseeing?
I think the role of the COO in any company is the most flexible. There's a lot of variation depending on the company. So first of all, of course, the COO and the CEO need to be a very good match in terms of skills and capabilities that are complementing each other. So it really depends a lot on the CEO and their focus, what they choose to take and what they're good at, and then selecting the right COO to make it whole. In general, the usual suspects that report to a COO org are like all of the admin functions from finance to operations, office, HR even. And then traditionally games companies, production has been a department that also, and some game development functions have reported to a CEO as well. This really depends a lot on also the size of the company, on how things are divided. We have a leader who's responsible for production and game development, and we felt that's sort of a necessary division now that we're in the new world of Netflix. Also, I'm in charge of the integration work currently with Netflix. So that's a massive project that takes a lot of my time.
Yeah, I can relate as well to the integration project as a whole job by itself, because I'm in the middle of it as well with Savage Games and post-acquisition from PlayStation. I think it's a kind of an underestimated work when you think, okay, it should be good. When you look at all the streams and tracks, yes, this is a process, right? So I think it's worth mentioning that indeed it's part of your priorities as well, like part of integrating another company and what it means as well for you as Next Games being part of Netflix. One thing I would like to spend some time as well is about the complementary of CEO and COO. Is it something that has been intentional through your journey at Next Games, or that's crystallized over time? Because I believe you started working with the CEO in your different function from the beginning. And I'm curious of how this relationship has evolved and maybe clarity to make this great match that you are as CEO and COO, and how do you complement each other basically?
So our CEO Teemu and we go way back even before Next Games. So we met originally when we both worked at Rovio. So we've known each other for 14, 15 years. Feels like a lifetime.
Wow.
And so we didn't actually work together very closely back in the day at Rovio, but we know each other. And then he got in touch with me when he had joined Next Games and talked about this amazing opportunity. And Teemu has this amazing ability to, from a strategic perspective, to paint the picture and really make people align with his approach. I was excited to join the company and to work with him again, even more closely. We formed our good complementary relationship throughout the years. I did start playing a very small startup that was like essentially 10 people crammed in a single room at a co-working office, starting as the person who was coming in and building marketing, comms, and player support function. I worked very hands-on with all of that for quite a while myself before the team got larger and I gradually shifted more towards a leadership role. And I guess I've always enjoyed making things work. So we've had this constant focus on evolution and never staying still within that team as well. And I guess gradually extending that towards the whole company and seeing that something's not working or we could do something better or there's a trend going on here. Maybe we should take this into consideration. He's been an incredible leader on the sort of business development, and he's brought in so many things, including Netflix, to us that, I could have never imagined.
Do I understand then correctly, in this dynamic, that Teemu as the CEO has been also more outwards, external image, and you've been really more internal operation, how things run, right? Would that be an accurate definition, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I think that's, more or less accurate. Of course, there's a whole lot more nuances. I guess we've both had varying degrees of internal versus external focus throughout the years, whenever that's needed to be taken.
There are two key phases of a company, the IPO, which is a big event, right, internally, and then also acquisition. And what was your role at the time of the IPO?
When we started contemplating the IPO, we really were 3 people working very closely on that project, our CEO Teemu and our CFO Annina, then myself, and I was in the CMO role at the time. I would say not fun all the time at the time, but in hindsight, really rewarding and one of the best professional experiences and learnings I've ever had. And also, I'm very thankful that I've seen through an IPO, I've been a part of it. I know how to get it done. And then also, for many years, operating as a publicly traded company, which is not entirely uncomplicated, but learning the tricks of the trade, that's been incredibly rewarding, even though it's hard. It has been hard at times. Of course, all of our game projects, massive undertakings and sort of big projects in themselves, but outside of the games. One tough period was the period when we had to go financial restructuring, and also we had to lay off a portion of our staff. And at that point, I also took over the HR function at Next Games. It was heartbreaking. We took it very seriously, both from a leadership and comms perspective, and really wanted to make sure that every decision we made was ethically sound and in accordance with our values. And I'm very proud of the effort that the whole team put into it and the caring to make sure that we do as much as we can at those circumstances. So that certainly wasn't a fun thing to do, but in hindsight, I'm proud of the team.
Yeah, I think you describe here examples that are by nature quite difficult because it's deep restructuring a company, whether it's layoff, financial restructuring, IPO, and how do you handle those as a leader? This is the opportunity for growth. If you can go through the journey and accept the discomfort of the situation and not to go in detail of a period of layoff, it's always difficult. I've been part of one as well, also initiate one. It was the first time and it was really difficult personally and professionally. And I wanted to hear your personal experience, as a leader, your philosophy about it, because you understand from a business point of view, sometimes this decision needs to be made or financial implication. And what is your compass in a way to how you make this decision when this situation happen, whether it's a layoff or something really complicated, but it will affect people, but it's good for the company. How have you approached it?
Difficult decisions on who will be affected and so on and so forth. You can't really advise anyone from the outside unless you're familiar with the situation. So that's something that needs to come from the company and understanding the situation and how can you carry on operations essentially with just a fewer number of people. And as a leader, you have to take yourself and your personal opinions and also people from the picture, and at the end of the day reduce things down to roles and skills and so on and so forth. But then when it comes to the people side, I'm a big supporter of transparency as much as you can have. These types of situations should be faced with really fierce sort of transparency and explaining everything and not hiding behind processes or like anything like this. So we essentially like brought things out in the open and, really like constructed this plan where we brought in the employees to discuss this and hear out, ask questions face to face and anonymously as well. And really the leadership has to weather the storm during times like this.
At the end of the day, we are as humans with our abilities, we try to do our best, trying to meet in the middle where people sometimes need more information, context or time or space to process things. So it's sensitive, but this is also why in those roles we have to lead the change and do it in the most mindful way and empathetic, as I hear as well. That's the way you think about it. This is also what I like to think of as a test for the company culture, because how you do things, not only in good times, but also in difficult times, tells a lot about the culture. So how much have you been involved in this work of crystallizing, defining or steering the culture? And are you actually close to it these days with a new position as a COO?
Next Games has really been very values-led company from the get-go. We've done this regularly where we bring all of our employees to discuss our values. So I was part of my first when we were about 10 people back in the day, and it was very much about forming the values and what do we stand for as a team and so on and so forth. And so we've made sure that over the years we carried this on. There's been an unfortunate break during the pandemic where we had a year and a half almost, like when we didn't have a workshop. But just a couple of weeks ago, we spent a day with everyone in the company and we flew over our remote working employees as well to discuss our values as a studio and also what it means to be a part of Netflix. Because of course, a lot of people have asked us, how will Netflix influence our values and ways of working? And of course, time will tell, but we will continue to operate off of our own culture, values perspective. So there is no pressure to assimilate unless we as a studio feel like we should. Obviously, being part of Netflix, it does influence things. We would have been influenced by the decision to stay as a public company or had we been acquired by different companies. So values and culture, they don't live in a vacuum. They're always changing.
I guess it's not the same to do it when you are 10 and when you are, how many people are you today?
We're about 130 today.
Yeah, exactly. There's an approach that is still bottom up where you want to involve people to feel part of it because they are, at the end of the day, defining the culture from who they are. And also there's the context of being part of Netflix. So how at this scale do you manage to get still the input of people? Is it even possible?
I would say it's very much possible. Working with the values is important, make room for the conversation. But it's also important that those values come through, like you have to verbalize them first of all. But then when you have that on paper, that comes through your actions, even overemphasizing that every now and then in your like day-to-day conventions. We, for example, have things like all of our new employees meet our CEO during their first month or so. Mm-hmm. So he talks mainly about our values and our company culture and our sort of philosophy here. And he really doesn't like actually talk about much else unless obviously questions are brought up. Then there's a whole host of other values and culture related onboarding that we do. For example, we do diversity, inclusion and belonging training, which is a huge contributor into this. With our new employees, we do trainings, of course, for the whole staff. Small but important things like we have this habit of Friday kudos, which nice. Pre-pandemic used to be this like circle of employees who come together at our cafeteria to say thanks to somebody, be it in your team or whoever. We've really tried to enforce that you should use our values as a basis. So you hear a lot about, hey, this week I want to thank Mark for like his curiosity in this new project and so on and so forth. And then, during the pandemic, we brought it onto Slack on our Next Games General Slack channel where we have a thread of kudos thread to end the week on Fridays. You can see kind of like the values coming through because people remember then we have our like Slack emotes for each of our values and so on and so forth. So It's big things and small things.
That's a really good list of a concrete example, by the way, how you incorporate small or bigger level. I find the most challenging part when you reassess the values, collect the input, try to see who are we today. It's verbalizing it because words have, an international company as well, have so many different meanings. Have you worked more internally when you have done this whole work of verbalizing, or have you been helped with, I don't know, external partners? I was curious how you've been approaching it.
So early on, it was like fully internal. But I feel like we didn't need help at the time because our CEO was very like values driven, and he was the sort of person who like really initiated this discussion. Also, me coming from a comms and marketing background, I was more or less the person who was taking all these ideas and thoughts and putting that on paper and copywriting it, if you will. Effectively, the three terms that we use, caring, curiosity, and courage, I wrote the words down, but of course I didn't come up with what's in them. For example, now when we run our workshop, we used an external facilitator to structure the workshops and really like time us, figure out what are the things that we should discuss and shouldn't discuss and the focus and so on and so forth. So that was really great because of course like we have a very small HR and admin team as well and everybody has their hands full. So this was such a good decision and not trying to like scramble to get it done ourselves. So I think I would say that it depends a bit on the team structure. No shame in bringing an external facilitator or like somebody who's going to help you with the words and really taking the input from the organization and from the leadership and then putting it in words because it's not like that's everybody's skills. So you need special skills to get that done.
Yeah, I can totally recognize it. And so it's also reassuring to hear as well that you came to a similar conclusion because it's a skill, right? And it's okay on the startup level, you start a foundation, but as you scale, it's like there are many back and forth conversations that happen and you don't want to have too many biases through the process on how you do things, right? And so having like you say, a coordinator, someone to facilitate the conversation, take note, keep it more neutral to extract really what is being said and not just one person having more weight, like influence the outcome where we try to represent a bit like more of a company.
Yeah, and I think also like the way you describe the values, like it's really depends on where the company is on their journey. If it's like a small startup, a big company, for example, what we've noticed on how Next Games values, like the studio values are described versus Netflix values, even though we're very aligned on the philosophy, I think there's a cultural difference, also a difference in one company is a big company and the other is like a relatively small studio and so on and so forth. So it really needs to fit the needs and maybe evolve over time as well.
And I have a question through the different growth phase. I guess we talk about culture as well, because you started like from, you had multiple hats towards a more official big roles like CMO and CO today. And one thing that is definitely part of the nature of a startup evolution, like from foundation, surviving, releasing your first success, growing, maturing, it requires different people, different roles and different skills. And you have, in a way, adapted to different phases. But as you grow as well, not everyone is always up for the next phase, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been afraid of change as such. Being able to adapt comes from sort of like my core motivation of like fixing it for the team and making things work and, having the ball on the future and the strategy and so on and so forth. There are like certain people who are the startup founders, like crazy enough to set up a new company and really embark into a completely unknown future. And that's not probably me, but we need those folks in the industry.
What makes a lot of sense for you as a COO, where this is exactly what you do. What does the company need? Like steering it forward. I take away as well from what you describe, it's also a way of being, a personality where you have to love the change, adapting, and not being shaken too much. Although I'm curious about that part, that like, is it something that you've developed over time, or it has been always part of you and that helped you to be where you are, or it's something you have to learn, you've been helped through a way to just be resilient, like you said, and go forward?
I'm sure like some people are born with that ability and I know people who are, but for me, it's certainly been a long journey to get to the point where I am today. Of course, I care about opinions and they do get to me every now and then. But I think it's years of experience working across different industries, many years in gaming, leadership experience, like working with so many people coming from so many different backgrounds and perspectives. It helps you understand what's important and what isn't, because at the end of the day, we all have our hands full.
I like it. And I'm in a phase as well of change. So it's very helpful to hear from other executives in the industry. And you have a long experience. Exactly. I think focus is important. Like, what do you need to go forward and what is not helping you, which can fill your day quickly on top of as well personal life. So good reminder. Thanks for this, Saara. And as we're reaching also the end of our conversation today, I would like to close the talk today with what is your main focus these days, like going forward, whether it's personal, professional, with all the exciting things that are happening with Netflix, what keeps your mind busy?
Oh dear, everything. So professionally, top of my mind is the integration. I'm really excited to soon be settled with Netflix. There's a lot of structure that will help us as a studio to really focus on making the games and really not worrying about the next financing round or the shareholders or things like this that the leadership team had to focus quite a bit in the recent years. We have a couple of really exciting game projects that we're working on in addition to the Stranger Things Puzzle Tales game that we now relaunched on Netflix. So that's very exciting. I think there's sort of big change brewing, which is not a drastic thing that's going to land on us one day, but something that us as a collective are working on, which is the transition away from free to play towards being a Netflix core studio with no monetization goals, really focusing on fun and engagement.
That sounds super exciting indeed. And I'm looking forward to seeing your titles and part of the next games. It's a big question, how will we approach the game experience when you are on a subscription platform and not have to think about the free to play. So yeah, I have my own subscription on Netflix and playing some of the games. Looking forward to trying this. Well, thanks a lot, Saara, for the conversation today. I've enjoyed it a lot. Very inspiring things for me as well to take the journey. And yeah, good luck with what's coming for you.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. I am trying to grow a community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. So if you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders because we have so much more we can learn from each other. Also, please don't forget to follow the show so you don't miss out on future content. Every episode is packed with actionable insights that will help you improve your leadership skills now. And if you are interested in learning more on the topics that we discussed today, you can find more insights on riseandplay.io, and there you will also find my free masterclass on conscious leadership. So, have a great week, and until the next time,